Hello and welcome to this week's Different League show, sponsored by Betfred. So the fans are allowed back. Okay, it's only a maximum of 4,000 and we don't yet know which tier the clubs will be in as we speak, but surely it is a step very much in the right direction. Lots of football to talk about as well in the company of Mark Langdon and also the former Spurs, Leeds, Blackburn and England goalkeeper Paul Robinson. Robbo, good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yourself?
Looking well. Long drive down?
Yeah, but well worth it to see you.
Flattery get you everywhere. Listen, let's talk about it. Fans allowed back. How good is that?
It's brilliant for the fans. It's going to be filtered down through the levels where we know that money's needed in football. The lower leagues, the so-called lesser teams that are crying out for the revenue of the fans to come back. But it's also the mental health of the fans as well that are going to be allowed back to watch these games. People who haven't been able to watch football, haven't been able to watch live sport. It's a double-edged sword because, we heard Paul Barber speaking yesterday quite openly that it's actually going to cost them money. It's going to cost Premier League teams money that they have to open these huge stadiums, they have to steward them, they have to put on all the testing, and the sanitisation stations, and it'll end up probably costing them more than it's going to be worth their while doing. But, it's something that's getting the fans back, and it's so important that they have to do this. Yeah,
there's talk and even a fear that the Premier League clubs might reject it. Do you think they will? And what does this also mean for the EFL clubs, especially in League One and League Two?
I think for the EFL clubs particularly, absolutely massive. If you think of, just say Leyton Orient, who, not everybody will be able to go to Tottenham, to West Ham and, the surrounding London clubs. I mean, they'll be as packed to the rafters as they possibly be for as probably for the rest of the season because people are, gagging to get there and it'll be the same, Paul lives near Harrogate and for their fans to be able to actually go and watch a team back in the Football League for the first time, that's an amazing feeling. I think it is a tricky one for the Premier League teams. There's no doubt about that because it's not going to be like the football that we sort of know it. There's still staggered times and there's talk of no singing and no alcohol being served and kind of a lot of the things that people enjoy going to the football, but just to be back in the stadium, to kind of smell it, to see the floodlights, I think will be an important moment really as we sort of move forward and sort of light at the end of the tunnel.
How do they decide who gets a ticket? And should it be more?
Well, the cynic in me says it's whoever pays most we'll get them. I mean, it's most are saying it will be on sort of ballots and draws, but even that brings its own complications because the government don't want people travelling from certain areas. But of course, a team like Liverpool, Manchester United got fans from all over. So is it only going to be those from local areas allowed in? Are you going to get people from London travelling up to Manchester or to Merseyside or vice versa? It's
will it be allowed?
Yeah, it's a complicated process. There's no doubt about that. And we're speaking off air really. The sponsors will want their part of the pie as well. So it's tricky, but it's good. I think it's the first step into hopefully getting back to something like normal.
You're going to have to be really careful as well that the tickets go into the right hands. The clubs have got a responsibility here. Season ticket holders, people who have followed the club loyalty membership schemes, etc. We know about the black market of tickets. People will buy tickets. Tickets will fall in the wrong hands for the right amount of money, if you like. And what Mark just touched on there about people who pay X amount of thousand a year for a box will feel that they deserve a ticket more than somebody else will. And the clubs have got a huge responsibility to make sure that these tickets are allocated fairly, amongst their fans.
Yeah.
And we talk about the fans going back. It's going to be a huge boost for the players as well. It's been so strange to watch football. I've played behind closed doors a couple of times, and it's like a training game. And we've seen the results this year. We've seen some of the performances this season. It hasn't been the Premier League as we know it. There's been some great results, but there's been some strange results as well. And I personally don't like early kickoffs, and players, historically, you don't like early kickoffs, you'll know. You get up in the morning, there's the low sun, and they're not quite the same as playing later on in the day or under lights. So we've had different games as well. So I think it'd be a huge bonus for the players as well, that some kind of normality is coming back with fans coming in.
One, keep your money in your pocket, don't you go in the black market. I know what you're like. But two, with every positive decision, there's always a sort of a negative angle. What do you say to the people who are saying, well, it depends on what clubs the tiers are in as to whether you're allowed fans to come in and therefore there's an unfair sporting advantage?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
We're government-led at the moment. I mean, we can sit here and debate that all day. I mean, I spoke to you before. I'm allowed to go and play golf. I'm not allowed, to go and play golf with somebody I live with, but I can sit in a stadium full of 4,000 strangers next week. I mean, there's certain logistics that just don't seem to add up. And teams will get unfair advantages. Smaller stadiums that are allowed 4,000 fans in, as opposed to bigger stadiums who are allowed none or one or two. But we've just got to be grateful for it coming back. It's small steps, but the steps in the right direction, and we're finally getting fans back in the stadiums, which is the biggest thing.
That last couple of sentences, for me, is what it's all about. Step in the right direction. Let's not worry about unfair advantage, because you know what it's like as footballers as well. It's great for the fans to be back, but if you're playing at Old Trafford and there's only 4,000 people there, it's not going to make that much difference to the Man Utd players.
It's not going to make much difference at all. You've not got a huge hoarding of support behind you. It's the small steps forward, and it's how we progress from the 4,000. It's then you want to see the 10,000, the 20,000. And we've seen it done in other countries, so we should be following that, and hopefully we'll get to see stadiums full again very soon.
Okay, well, let's talk Premier League now and goal scorers. You got Calvert-Lewin, Son, Vardy, Salah. If not on a goal a game, then even better. Have you ever seen the Premier League having such a ferocious goal-scoring race so early in the season?
Not so early, no. And I think that goes with the games, what we touched on earlier, about the strange games, some of the strange results and fixtures that we're seeing, the amount of goals that we're actually seeing. I think it was a record for the amount in one season so early on. But, you talked about Calvert-Lewin there, and I think he's the one I think he's maybe surprised a few people. I think he's developed into an all-round top striker, and he's put himself right up there in the international frame as well. In the 18 months or so since the start of last season, which does seem like an eternity ago, he's become one of the league's best, strikers, leading scorers. He's evolved physically. He looks physically stronger. He looks fitter. And under Ancelotti, he seems to have just flourished. But as you say, there's a number of strikers that are scoring a lot of goals at the moment.
You say he surprised a lot of people. Has he surprised you, and can he keep this up?
He has surprised me, yeah. He has surprised me. And I touched about he's forced himself into the international setup. And, you look at the likes of Kane, Rashford, Sterling, Sancho. And then for me, it's between Abraham and Calvert-Lewin for that final place in the Euro squad, should everybody be fit. And I think that's how good he is now. That's where he's put himself.
Abraham's playing pretty well at the moment as well. Mark, you tipped Son as your 66-1 outsider in the big kickoff. How much did you put on it?
No, it's not a bad start, is it? I mean, I know with Son, I think you could see that development sort of last season. Not so much the Kane dropping right off, but Mourinho doesn't like his sort of players to, just do nice things. He wants them to be killers, sort of, in the box. If it's a attacking midfielder like a Lampard, he wants them to make big impacts. So there was never any chance that like the wide players at Spurs were going to be, just hanging on the touchline and trying to create space for others. It was always going to be about getting him into that penalty area and scoring goals. And his standards now, Son, is sort of. You could talk about him in that Mane, Salah kind of bracket, really. He's so deadly in front of goal. That first chance against Man City last week never really looked like missing. And the relationship he's got with Kane is obviously a big reason behind Tottenham's success so far.
You mentioned two other quality players. They play for Liverpool. Who would you prefer out of three of them?
It's a tough one.
It is, and I think I'd go for Salah because he takes penalties, and I think we've seen this season penalties is quite an important part of. There's a lot of cheap goals to be had from pens this year.
Just on who you think will be the Premier League top scorer, from what you've seen so far, who would you go for?
I like Jamie Vardy. I always, as an outside, not an outside bet, but as one of the favourites. I think he took himself out of the England fold, give himself time to concentrate on his club form, and he just keeps doing it week in and week out. And he's playing in a Leicester team that Brendan Rodgers has evolved again. He's lost some top players, but he seems to have evolved the team. They've had an injury problem. Okay, they've had a slip-up last week against Liverpool, but they're there and thereabouts, and Jamie Vardy will always score goals.
I'd go for Kane. I think he's in great form. He's a proven goal scorer, and I think Calvert-Lewin will wait to see if he can continue that. Vardy has, clearly, and Kane has as well.
The thing with Harry Kane is he does it every year, and historically the last 2 or 3 seasons, he's missed big chunks of the season, and he's still been the top scorer.
We'll see if he can stay fit. Okay, let's talk about the weekend's game, shall we? Friday night, game preview 1. It is Crystal Palace against Newcastle. And Palace lost to Burnley on Monday. No Will Zaha. Roy Hodgson denies that they rely heavily on him. But how much do they rely on him? Yeah,
they do rely heavily on him. And I'm surprised, actually, when Eze came in, that he actually stayed. I thought when Eze came in, that was a potential opening the door for Zaha to move on. But we know he's a top player, and Roy seems to keep getting the best out of him. They played a Burnley team that was struggling for form, but it was a game where you could see that was where Burnley were going to start the season off, get a win. It was a disappointing performance from Palace's behalf on their defensive show. I thought Burnley had the chances in the game; they had more chances to win it. But they'll be looking to bounce back against a Newcastle side, who in turn as well they're suffering a lot of injuries. A huge miss for them is Callum Wilson at the moment.
Yeah, he should be back. But I mean, you don't judge Newcastle on the games against the big boys, but they were poor against Chelsea, weren't they? And it is almost a question of no Callum Wilson, no goal threat.
No, I mean, it did feel like they were almost not giving the game away, but he felt like he thought the Palace one was more winnable and wasn't prepared to risk Wilson for that game. And when he wasn't on the team sheet, it kind of felt like Newcastle were already thinking maybe a little bit about Crystal Palace on Friday. It was a sort of tepid performance, maybe one where it's a different game if the fans are inside, and that could have been a sort of harder trip for Chelsea. But in the first 5 minutes, they were knocking the ball around. Like Newcastle put no pressure on the ball. It was a really poor performance. You still expect more, even against a quality team like Chelsea.
I was surprised because Newcastle's record of late against Chelsea at St James's Park has been really good. But like Mark says, even when they weren't 1 down, they still sat with a back 5 and a 4 in front, and they kind of conceded ground to Chelsea. It was a disappointing performance from Newcastle against Chelsea.
Yeah, they played for 0-0, and once it went 1-0, it's got no chance. How many goal scorers are in this game, especially if Will Sahar is out, and how do you see it going?
Well, when we talk about the bets and the tips, I think this is the only one of the whole weekend that I've tipped that there's no goals. Yeah. I can see the way that Palace played at Burnley, Newcastle, the way that they'll set up. There's every chance that this one is a 0-0.
I'm going for a draw as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 0-0.
I think there'll be just one goal in this, and I think there'll be only one goal scorer on the pitch, and that Callum Wilson, he will come back. So I'm going to go for a Newcastle win. We'll see. Game preview 2 on Saturday. It is Brighton against Liverpool. Now, I thought Liverpool were vulnerable with all the injuries coming off the back of the international break. Still no fans, obviously, at Anfield as well. I mean, Leicester were poor, but how good were Liverpool?
A huge statement from Liverpool. Everybody in the press, in the media, like ourselves, sat here discussing 8 injuries, 9 injuries, Van Dijk out potentially for the season, Trent Alexander out, Gomez out, huge defensive crisis. Then they turned in a performance like that against one of their so-called title challengers. And it was outstanding. I thought Wijnaldum came in at the centre of the pitch and he anchored everything. Milner slotted in at right back. And I thought it was a performance that just said, look, we're still here, we're not going away. There's talk about Liverpool, a top team, are they going to be a great team? They've done it consistently now for 18 months, 2 years and such. Champions League finalists, Champions League winners, Premier League winners, and they're still there. They're not going away. And he has got a quality squad. I don't think his squad is as strong as others when you get to the bones of it and you get in the depth of it. But it showed that with 9 injuries, even still to potentially 9 starters, that they can still get a result like that. Yeah,
and they're showing a different layer to themselves, aren't they? At the moment, he's being forced to put round pegs in square holes. He's having to play youngsters. And how good was Curtis Jones? I mean, that's massive credit to Klopp, isn't it?
I think it is. And also, when you often hear sort of when things are not going well, pundits will go, oh, they've got no plan B, they've got no plan C. I think the fact that Klopp has got one way of playing actually helps these backup players when they come in, because they know exactly what the role is and he's not going to change. And you felt like they'd be vulnerable to that sort of threat in behind of Vardy, but he trusts Matip and Fabinho to know the system. He's very much a system manager. He played exactly the same way at Borussia Dortmund, and I think that can help those that are coming in, that you're not going to free at the back and you're not trying diamonds in midfield, and you get managers that are changing it every week. He knows what he wants, the players know what they're supposed to do, and the end result is spectacular.
Yeah, I thought Jones and Milner were absolutely superb, but I mean, to be fair, if Liverpool were good against Leicester, how good were Brighton against Villa?
I think Brighton are one of the most underrated teams in the Premier League, what the manager's done there. I think they were outstanding against Villa. I think they're playing against the Villa team who are playing well this year. We've seen Ross Barkley come in there, Matty Cash, who's came in at right back. He's done outstandingly well. And Watkins up front as well. He's getting the goals. They've got a threat that they didn't have last year. And for Brighton to go there and put in a performance, not just put in a performance, but get the result, it was a really good result for them.
Okay, what's your Betfred selection for this game?
I think I'm going to go for, we didn't touch on him there, but Diogo Jota, I think, is the absolute bargain of the century at 40 million. You look at the type of player that he's got, that Liverpool have got, his ability to play in midfield, his goals. So I'm going to go for an away win and Jota to score any time.
Just a question on that as well. Mo Salah should be back. Does he play?
I think Mo Salah plays if he's fit.
So who doesn't?
I think it's the old adage that's been going on for a couple of weeks now. It's either Firmino or Jota. Or do you do what Jurgen does and just say they can both play together? It'd be interesting to see what he does. But I think Jota's got himself in a place. He can't be ignored. He's done a Jack Grealish in the England team.
And what do you think Klopp will do?
I would play Jota instead of Firmino. I think he will play both of them.
Yeah, he's done it already, isn't he? Yeah. Mark, how do you see it? What's your Betfred
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact he did it away to Man City and suggests that he'll do it sort of anywhere if he needs to. I'm going to go for a Liverpool win and over 2.5 goals. I think Brighton have got a little bit about them up front, create chances. 5 of Liverpool's 6 wins have seen at least 3 goals in them.
I agree, Brighton are underrated, but without Lamptey, he got sent off. Lallana came off in their last game as well. Wait to see if he's fit. I can't see how they can live with Liverpool. For me, it's Liverpool winning and to nil. Okay, game preview 3, Manchester City against Burnley. Now Robbo, what's happening with Pep City? They lost to Spurs, they didn't score, they're missing Aguero, yes, but the stats suggest that they're not creating the chances as much as they've done under Pep as well in previous seasons.
Yeah, you forget they lost Leroy Sané as well. They brought Torres in, so-called direct replacement, but they've had to play him up the middle due to the fact they've lost Aguero and Jesus for most of the season. Yeah, their stats this morning, I read something this morning, their points tally since Pep's been there is by far the lowest that they've ever had at this stage of the season. Not close, but by far. And their league position would suggest that. They're languishing in the bottom half of the league, and it's just not something that you would expect a Manchester City team to be doing. I think he's shored up his defence. I think the defensive partnership that he's got there now with Laporte and Thiago at the back, I think that will be fruitful for him. And he's got Ake on the bench should he need the backup. But goal scoring, which you never thought you'd hear yourself saying, is Manchester City's problem at the moment.
Why do you think that is then? Because you wouldn't think it with the quality of players.
You wouldn't think it, no. And but it's not just the quality of strikers, but the De Bruyne's, the Mahrez's, in behind, and Phil Foden to come into that fold. I can only think it's going to be a matter of time. That the players are there, the quality in the squad's there, but I do genuinely think they rely heavily on Aguero, that central striker, and I think they've missed him a lot.
Yeah, they're not playing badly in this kind of middle third, but they are shoring up the defence. But going forward, they just don't seem to be creating the chances and putting it away. Is it as simple as missing Aguero, or a bit more than that?
I mean, he is a big miss, and we disagree on Jesus because you're a big fan of him.
I like him. Yeah, I think he's going to be a player.
I like him. I just feel like he does a little bit too much outside the box, and maybe Aguero just plays between the posts and sort of scores the goals, which is primarily what Man City sort of are missing at the moment. I think the fact that De Bruyne said he only had 7 days off, which I mean is not enough for a pre-season, so he's maybe feeling a little bit fatigued, but also the responsibility of having to create everything, because Bernardo Silva is way off the levels that I expect from him. Mahrez didn't get past Reguilon once in that game against.
Reguilon was brilliant.
Well, that's why. So Mourinho bought him a nice lunch, didn't he, on the back of it yesterday? So that impacts on them. I think the lack of a killer striker. And are too heavily reliant on Kevin De Bruyne at the moment.
I think I saw him put a bad pass in once in the last game. He must be tired. How important was that win for Burnley against Palace, their first win of the season? What does it mean for players when you're under pressure, you haven't won a game, you're down there and suddenly you get that first win?
Well, obviously having played for Sean for 12, 18 months, my time at Burnley, it was very unlike them not to be able to dig out a result. And the longer it went, you look at it and you think, there's something not right there. And there's talk of the club, a takeover in the boardroom that's obviously been rumbling on in the background. The manager's been quite vocal. He didn't get the players that he wanted in the summer. He wasn't backed in the transfer window, the relationship with the chairman. And all that adding up to not getting a result. And the longer it went, I was starting to think, you could worry for Burnley. But then they dig out the 1-0 result that you'd expect him to. And I think they have got enough to stay up. But it was worrying before the Palace game. But the man management that Sean's got and the way that he does things, nothing will have changed. He will have done the same every day. Training will have been routine, and the days off will have been the same. Nothing will have changed. The panic button won't have been pressed. And he just believes in his methods and he believes in his motives, and he will wait till he gets that result, and he got the result.
Tell us a bit more what he's like. He comes from the outside as a no-nonsense man, but his man management is very good, isn't it? Yeah,
it's the best, as a player, the best thing you can have is an honest manager, and he's an honest manager. Whether you want to hear it or not, he's honest with you. If you're not going to play at the weekend, he'll tell you you're not going to play, and he'll tell you why. He won't just turn a flip chart over and, you're not on the team, or, you're left out or whatever reason. He's very honest, he's very thorough. He surrounds himself by excellent members of staff who he trusts impeccably. And you can see the trust there between them, because quite often you'll be, in dressing rooms in teams, there'll be the eyes and ears of the manager, if you like, the coaches, and there'll be another coach. Whereas they're all a solid unit, and you know that they're not going to lie to you. what one will tell you is what the manager will tell you. And if you don't want to speak to the manager, you'll speak to one of them and get back. What he's created there and what he's done on the budget is fantastic. I mean, for a small club like Burnley to put them into a regular Premier League club has been unbelievable, and to achieve European football. But the thing for Sean Dyche is he's pigeonholed as an English manager, and the way he plays. You look at potentially Sam Allardyce, Sean Dyche, that type of ilk of manager. I'd just love to see him be given an opportunity.
Sorry.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, unfairly. I think I'd love to see a manager of Sean Dyche's talent and ability being given a bigger budget and better players. No disrespect to anybody at Burnley, a bigger budget and better players to see how they would handle it. Because you can see how Sean's developed a club and he's brought a club on and he's sustained it. Why couldn't he do that with better players and a bigger budget?
Well, you get the feeling that's going to happen at some point in the future. You talk about getting the first win and confidence. You're not suggesting they're going to get a second win here, are you?
No, I think it's going to be. I think it's a big ask. I think it's a very big ask against City. I think it's a home win, home banker, this one.
Betfred selection here?
I'm going for Man City to win and under 3.5 goals. Just plays on the fact that City are not quite as fluent as they'd like to be in the final third at the moment.
Yeah, I think they'll make it tough, Burnley, but I can see City winning both halves in this one, to be honest with you, and it ended up being a comfortable victory. Okay, game preview 4. It is a good game at Goodison Park, isn't it? Your old Leeds team going to Everton. And let's start with Everton. I mean, boy, did they need that win against Fulham, didn't they, after 3 straight defeats?
They were impressive against Fulham. I think the early goal obviously settled them down, but they started the season in an ilk where you thought, there's a real change here. I think every season, Everton fans, we're going to do better this year with Champions League, Europe places, potentially title challenges. But I think this year there's a real air of optimism, especially with the manager, because Everton in the transfer market are now a different power to what they were before. With Carlo Ancelotti at the helm, they've now got a huge pull. Players want to play for him, and I think his recruitment, the overhaul of the midfield that he did in the summer was fantastic. I think those 3 have been unbelievable. The pace, power and energy that he's inserted into that midfield, with now Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin both playing well, both scoring goals. I think it's a completely different team to what we saw last year. Didn't get the window in January. He's had the window in the summer, and they've been one of the biggest transformations for me.
It's a very good first 11, isn't it? The depth of the squad, question marks there. But interesting, Ancelotti went to 3 at the back. Do you feel it suits them more with the wing backs going a little bit further forward?
I think he's probably trying to get James sort of give him even fewer defensive responsibilities because Manchester United just clearly targeted that, didn't they? A game a few weeks ago where James had no interest in helping out the right back whatsoever. So it was probably more a case of trying to get the best out of them. And they still conceded a couple of goals. I know they were always in front and sort of always looked like they were going to win the game, but they have conceded a lot of goal. I think that's something he'll want to sort of knock out of them, because even when they were beating Brighton sort of a couple of months ago, they still conceded twice in that game. So he's probably looking for that right balance, because we've spoken about all these sort of the attacking players. Maybe it's sort of the defensive side of it's not quite right yet.
Calvert-Lewin with 2 more goals. We talked about Richarlison as well, didn't we? And when he comes
big,
back,
big player,
he does make a difference. In terms of Leeds, though, I mean, they didn't beat Arsenal, but after the 2 previous performances and scorelines as well, was that as good as it gets without scoring and winning?
Performance-wise, it was, yeah. Obviously, I've watched Leeds very closely this season. They had a great start to the season. Performance, they've not changed. They've got one way of playing. They press high. They play at a high tempo. And we all know the way that Bielsa wants players to play. They play murder ball in training, what he calls it, which is high intensity football for an hour and a half. And that's what they do on the pitch for 90 minutes. They started the season very well. Performances were good, but then worryingly lost 2 games 4-1. Defensively, they've not been sound. They've lost Liam Cooper at times, Robin Koch's not been fit, and Llorente, the new sign, has not been fit, so they've not had a steady centre-half partnership. The young goalkeeper's done okay, he's done well, but he's conceded a lot of goals. And it was worrying the fact that they lost to Crystal Palace 4-1. They weren't losing to Manchester City. They weren't losing to Liverpool 4-1. It was Leicester and it was Crystal Palace. So there was warning signs there. The way Leeds play, the way they just play wide open, they're vulnerable to the counter-attack. So they are going to lose games this year. You will see them concede goals. But two in a week and nothing really changed was worrying. But the Arsenal performance was outstanding. They were solid defensively and they created a lot of chances, and they should have put the game to bed in the first half before the sending off even happened.
Would you like to play in that team, with them being so open as a goalkeeper?
I wouldn't mind standing in goal, but I wouldn't like to run around, and the way he asks them to run around, the demands he puts on his players are phenomenal. But I think the 2 centre halves, they're probably the only stability that the goalkeeper's got in front of him, because the rest of them, they bomb forward and they try and win the ball at the earliest opportunity. It's great to watch though.
Before we get to your Betfred selection, where do you think they'll end up?
I said at the beginning of the season, I thought they'd finish mid-table, but they've got the capability of finishing top half. I can see them comfortably finishing 10th if they have a good season, somewhere above 10th, not pushing for Europe, but I think they could sneak a good season. But saying that, I'd take 17th right now.
What do you think, Betfred selection on this one? How do you see it going?
I think Leeds have got a big chance if they play like they did against Arsenal. So I'm going for Leeds or draw. So it's Everton not to win.
Okay, cool.
I've gone for my old team to have more than 6 shots on target in the game, because the way they play and the chances they create, more than 6 shots on target for Leeds.
Okay, I'm going to go for a score draw here. It's a really difficult one to call. I know Everton are playing really well. Look like they're back from last week. I love watching Leeds, I really do. And it will be an entertaining game. That's one thing you do get with Leeds United at the moment. Okay, game preview 5. It is a West Brom against Sheffield United, the first ever Premier League meeting. But how big is this one, Robbo? Especially with neither having won a league game yet.
Is it too early to say it's a 6-pointer?
No.
Already? I think you're looking at the league and you're looking at the way the two teams have started. I think, well, West Brom, they haven't spent a great deal. He's added to his squad. They were always going to struggle. But I'm very surprised the way Sheffield United have started. People are saying, have they been found out? Have teams found them out? But it's not a case of being found out, because teams have the scouting network, the videos and everything. After 5 or 6 games, every other team in the Premier League knows the way you play and knows your formation. So if Sheffield United were going to get found out, they got found out after 5 games last year. So I think there is an issue there. There's a fundamental problem. The fact that they hugely overachieved last year, and I think they're about right this year, about where they probably should have been last year, which has obviously surprised a few people because of how well that they did last year. They got on a roll, they had a system, they had a way of playing, and they managed to churn out the results. And what Chris Wilder achieved on the budget that he had was nothing short of phenomenal. But I think this year is probably about right where Sheffield United should be. And this is a huge game for both teams already.
It is, Mark, isn't it? I mean, very eventful game at Old Trafford for West Brom, but what can they take from the performance there? And in terms of Sheffield United as well, I mean, they've conceded the most goals from crosses and the most headed goals as well. That is relegation material, even though I don't think they will go down.
I mean, I think O'Connell's injury at the back's a big one for them in terms of, that had a real sort of settled team last year, and it's not quite happened that way this time around. I've said it before on here, Paul know more than me about goalkeepers, but Henderson, I think, is just a lot better than Ramsdale. And that's not saying Ramsdale is useless. It's just that Henderson is probably going to go on and play for England, for regularly once he gets in the United team. So I think there's been a big drop-off in goals. So that's their problem. For West Brom, I think they can take quite a lot from the last couple of games. They played okay against Tottenham. There wasn't much in that game until they scored late. And the Manchester United one turns on, a penalty decision that probably shouldn't have been overturned, and certainly was one that I think was 50-50, and once it's been given, you don't expect that to be changed because it's not a clear and obvious error. So I think they can point to being a little bit unlucky in a couple of really hard matches.
Got to get your thoughts and interest in what Mark was saying there, and he has mentioned it more than once, Henderson and Ramsdale.
Yeah.
Where do you see the two of them?
I think they overpaid for Ramsdale. I agree with you. I don't think he's at the level that Henderson's at. And I think we've seen that this year. I think the way that Henderson, it was his second season there, got them promoted, and you could see the way that he'd grown and the way that he'd established himself as a number 1 goalkeeper. Hence the reason that everyone is talking about him being Manchester United's number 1 at the beginning of this year. And he made a decision to go back there, or whether he wasn't allowed to go back out on loan. And that's hindering his international career now. He's not getting a chance there because he's not playing football. But I do think Sheffield United miss him. I think Ramsdale has potential to be a good goalkeeper, but I think they paid an awful lot of money for him, and I think he's still got a lot to prove.
There you go. Even Paul Robinson's agreeing with you there.
Yeah,
absolutely spot on there. Betfred selection for this game then. It's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think it's going to be an ugly game. So, and it's going to be a really tough one to predict. So I think erring on the side of caution for a bet, I'd probably go more than 4 cards in the game.
Yeah, that's a very good bet. I think there will be.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it will be quite dirty and quite tense.
Physical, Mark.
Yeah, but I'm going to go for a West Brom win. I think Conor Gallagher's, I'm really impressed with him. He could be the difference between the two teams.
I think it pretty much is a 6-pointer, or certainly massive in terms of these two teams down there. And I just think there's more chance of Sheffield United getting out of trouble eventually than West Brom. So I'm actually going to go for an away win, but I respect both Slaven Bilic and Chrissy Wilder. It is a massive game. Game preview 6, it is Southampton against Manchester United. And Mark, Man U got their first home league win of the season at the 5th attempt. Nearly didn't come with a penalty being retaken, but a good result last night as well in the Champions League.
I think that was probably the more impressive one, really, because too often United have sort of followed up a win with a real dodgy performance, and they killed that game really early against Başakşehir, so there were no problems there. Shouldn't impact on them fatigue-wise. Quite an easy match for them. Fernandes is still scoring goals. Looks like obviously giving Rashford the opportunities. You don't like that?
I don't get that one.
No.
I don't get that one. Get your penalty, get your hat-trick, create the chance later if you want, even if you threw on goal and pass it to him.
I'm a goalkeeper and I don't understand strikers at the best of times. But if I've got the chance of scoring a Champions League hat-trick, I ain't giving that ball to anyone.
No chance. Sorry, Paul. Mark, go on.
No, but I just think it shows that, looks like there's a decent bit of camaraderie there, and maybe Solskjaer has found a sort of way to play, I suppose, in the last couple of weeks, because it's been a really horrible start to the season for them, particularly domestically.
I think it's fair to say he's had some ups and downs already, and we know what a season brings, many ups and downs. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is certainly experiencing lots at the moment. Where do you see United right now? Do you see progression under him?
No, not yet. I think, the ups and downs is exactly how you describe it correctly. From the start of his managerial career, every time he becomes under pressure and there's talk of his job going, he pulls out a result from somewhere, like the result at Goodison Park a couple of weeks ago against Everton, a performance and a result. And then the Champions League, they'll lose at home 6-2, 6-1 to Tottenham, and then they'll go and beat PSG in the Champions League. So the ups and downs and the inconsistency is what's become the norm under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's rule. And the next 4 to 6 weeks between now and the other side of Christmas, the Carabao Cup comes back in, the FA Cup comes in January, the Champions League, they need another point probably to qualify from the group, their league position. I think the next 4 to 6 weeks for Manchester United, and more so Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, is going to really shape the rest of their season.
It's going to be fascinating, isn't it? Everyone talking about the future. I hope he does well, but I'm not sure he's the right man. We've talked about Pochettino waiting in the wings, haven't we? Southampton might be slightly disappointed they didn't win against Wolves, but Theo Walcott's doing a pretty good impression of Danny Ings, isn't he?
He is, yeah. He offers that. He's not got the finishing ability of Ings, I think it's fair to say, but he offers the same kind of threat in wanting to run in behind. And Hassan Hutel doesn't have to change. Spoke about Klopp not changing systems. Hassan Hutel doesn't have to, because he's got somebody else that can just do that job for him. It's not like he's bringing in sort of a 6'6" striker and then you have to play a completely different way. So Walcott, I suppose, a bit like Gareth Bale, feels comfortable being sort of in inverted commas home, sort of somewhere where he sort of is loved and trusted, and can kind of probably just see out the rest of his career in familiar surroundings. There's a lot to be said for that kind of that comfort. But it was still a good point away to Wolves ultimately. I mean, they would have taken it, I think, before the match started. How it played out, maybe not, but it continued their good run.
Before I get your Betfred selection, just want to ask you, we touched on Henderson versus Ramsdale. What about Henderson versus De Gea?
You can see why Solskjaer made the decision that he did. Because if you take De Gea out, you lose him. He's been Manchester United's number one for a number of years and their player of the year for a number of years. Plays for Spain. He's not going to want to sit on the bench behind Dean Henderson. Dean Henderson has still got time on his side. If he wasn't picked,
he's impatient young lad.
He wasn't picked as number one. He's not going to go banging Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's door down, demanding to play. Whereas if you take De Gea out, I think you lose him. Over the age that he is and the stage in his career is, he's not going to want to sit on the bench at Manchester United. If he took De Gea out and played Henderson first game of the season, I think we'd have seen De Gea leave in January, and then it'd have created himself another problem, because Romero looks like he's on his way as well.
So why did Henderson go to or stay at Man U this season?
I don't know if he was given assurances, but I think he looked at the Champions League, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, the amount of games that Manchester United is going to have. He is going to play. Without a shadow of a doubt, he's going to get probably 10 to 15 games this season, but he's not going to be the number one at the moment. He's got to earn that right at Manchester United to be the number one, but it's a choice that he's made. So he can't sit there and be angry and upset with the manager, because it's a choice that he's made, knowing that was an option. But for me, from the outside looking in, there's a European Championships coming up at the end of the season. Gareth Southgate looked at that last week and he's gone, Nick Pope's playing the Burnley team that's struggling and he's playing okay, but not well enough. Henderson's not playing at all. I think that's one of the reasons that the manager come out and publicly backed his number one, because at the moment that's the best option that he's got.
So what does Henderson do if he wants to play for England?
There's nothing he can do unless he gets himself into the Manchester United team. I think there's no way of him getting out on a loan. I mean, I read in the paper the other day there was a talk of him going to Celtic on loan between now and the end of the season. But with Romero already burnt his bridges by the sound of it last summer, there was obviously a couple of moves on the cards for him. That didn't happen. I think he's obviously been given the assurances that he can leave in January. There's absolutely no way that Dean Henderson's going to be allowed to leave. So it's a case of he's going to have to sit where he is until he's given his opportunity.
It's a fascinating topic. We could talk for ages, but I'll get your Betfred selection now for this game.
I've been really impressed with Hasenhüttl. We haven't touched on him, but I think the job that he's done there has been absolutely incredible. And Shea Adams this season as well, scoring goals as well as his performances. So I'm going to go for a Shea Adams goal anytime and a Southampton win.
Interesting.
I'm going for an upset as well. Southampton win.
Oh yeah, I'm going to go for a score draw. I think United have got the confidence back at the moment. They seem to go in patches, don't they? At the moment, they're in a good patch, but we'll see. Okay, game preview 7 on Sunday. Chelsea against Spurs. Now, I think
Let's get a couple of
I'm going to be
stewards.
ganged up on here, aren't I? I'm sure I am. I mean, two teams in fantastic form. We saw Chelsea win last night, perhaps just, but they're in great form at the moment, got the balance right. Same could be said of Jose Mourinho and Spurs. I
mean, there's two teams with two managers who have got to produce this year. It's a really big test for Frank now. He's been given a window. He's been given a lot of money. He's got his own team. He's put his own touch on it. He's brought some outstanding players. He's brought a lot of quality players, and the results now are coming alongside that. Jose came in. Jose was brought in for a reason, to win trophies. You know, there was the week at the beginning of this season where he had the European qualification and the Carabao Cup. He said, "Oh well, I'm not going to put a strong team out in the Carabao Cup because my focus is on Europe." He so went on to put a strong team out, beat Chelsea, and also progress in Europe in the same week. He's keeping all his balls up in the air, Jose. He knows that he can be part of history by winning something at Spurs this year, and I genuinely believe that he can with the team that he's got. But also, Frank now, he's made huge decisions as well. He's cut his teeth as a manager at Derby, but now he's gone to Chelsea, and the goalkeeper, Kepa, in my opinion, rightly so, he's gone, I don't fancy him, he's not performing, I need to replace that, I need to change that. And he's made other big decisions because it's his head on the block because he's got to get the results. And I think they've been fantastic this season, I really do. I think they're genuine title contenders, both of them.
So big seasons for both managers, you're saying. What's success or what's par? What are you expecting them to do? It's interesting you say that they're both at title challengers.
I think they're both title challengers. Minimum, absolute minimum Champions League qualification and some form of silverware in either cabinet.
Interesting. I mean, Frank Lampard and Jody Morris have got the balance right, haven't they, between defence and attack at the moment? But they'll be up against Kane, Son, Bale, possibly.
I'm not sure if he'll that one against Man City where he didn't play Bale. I think I'm not sure he's maybe 100% fit enough to be able to do what he wants to sort of the wide players. Like you saw Son just going up and down the wing sort of all game. I don't think Bale can sort of do that. And this is, away to Chelsea feels like maybe not quite as difficult as City, but it's not far off it. So I expect, it to be another kind of defensive performance from Tottenham where the wide players are asked to do a lot, to help the fullbacks out and the team. So I'm not sure that suits Gareth Bale.
Well, it's going to be tough, whoever it is.
Yeah,
for the Chelsea defence.
Yeah, it will, because if you're looking at what Thiago Silva hasn't got, it's pace, and so I'm sure that Son and whether it's Bergwijn or Lucas or Bale, they'll look to try to kind of isolate him and sort of target that ball in behind him. But he's he's an experienced player. He hasn't had much pace for a while now, and he still finds ways of blocking off runs and just uses his know-how, I suppose, of the game. But it's a fascinating game. I think the real big moment for me though was towards the end of that City game when Alderweireld did his groin, and I think he's Tottenham's best defender. And if Tottenham have got one sort of area of concern, I think it is still just defensively, and sort of losing your best defender could be a big one.
How do you see that? And it's interesting that Frank actually has a really good record against Jose. Come up against him 4 times and came out victorious each time. Anything in that, do you feel that he knows him so well as a manager?
I think there's obviously a little bit of niggle there. You see him on the touchline together as well. And I've been at a couple of games where I've actually watched him closely on the touchline. And Frank's no longer the pupil now. He's taken the mantle on. And he stands up to Jose even on the touchline. He's like, look, no, I'm your equal now. And I don't think Jose likes that. But it's great to watch, and it's great, and they're both doing fantastic jobs. What Mark said there about Alderweireld is huge for Spurs. He's their best defender by a long way, and they invested in the window. Joe Rodon, a young lad who came in, the Welsh defender, and it's now time for him to step up. Davinson Sanchez has been left out the last 2 squads, which obviously means that Jose thinks that Rodon is a better defender than him, or he's ahead of him in the pecking order. So it looks like it could be Rodon and Eric Dyer as a centre-half partnership. Interesting.
Betfred selection for this one then?
It's a really, really tough one to call. I probably tend to stay away from goals and results. I'm going to go for a really random one, and both teams to have more than 2 corners in each half.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of width in both teams. I think Chelsea will just edge it. That front three, probably Ziyech, Abraham and Timo Werner, might just have a little bit too much for Spurs.
Does that hurt you saying that?
No, because I just think from a betting point of view, you always got to go with, you always have to go with your head rather than your heart. You're going Chelsea, I can see.
I'm actually not.
No.
I'm going to go for a score.
That comes from a Tottenham fan who's lost a lot of money over the years.
Well, just a Tottenham fan.
Yeah. We've been through the mill.
I'm actually going for a score draw. I also think Chelsea, in terms of, they've played 2 days earlier. Spurs are at home in the Europa League, but it'd be interesting to see the team that Jose picks out. But I just think going forwards, I love Harry Kane. I think he's absolutely amazing, and it's him and Son. I think there'll be goals for both. I'm going to go for a score draw. But yeah, I certainly hope Chelsea do win that one. Okay, next up, it is game preview 8. It is Arsenal against Wolves. And Arsenal were terrible against Villa. They weren't much better against Leeds, were they? I know it doesn't help when you get a player sent off early in the second half, but it's not happening for Mikel Arteta and Arsenal at the moment.
No, there's a lot of rumblings of unrest there. Quite surprisingly so. He's not been given as much time as I thought he would before the noises, started coming out with the Arsenal fans and the uncertainty and question marks about him. I think he came in, he won 2 trophies in the first 6 months. And
Spurs fans wouldn't mind that, would they?
No, I mean, you wouldn't at all, no. And I think he did some decent business in the transfer window. I thought Willian was a really astute signing, but he hasn't quite hit the heights or hit the form that he had when he was at Chelsea and created as many chances as you'd like to see him. Aubameyang, since he signed his new contract, hasn't been the same player. But Arteta, I think he's one of the world's best young coaches. At his age, he's younger than me. I think he's 39, 40. I think he's 40 years old. To have served his apprenticeship under Pep, I'm sure people are fed up of hearing that. But when you work on a daily basis with somebody at that level, you pick everything up, and to have that education and to come in, he had a huge job there when he came in. He had a huge remoulding job to do, not only the back 4 but the midfield. And he started to do that, and he started to put his own identity on it. He's given the youngsters a chance. I think it's just a case of sticking with him and giving him time and trusting what he's trying to do. You can't put your own identity on a team in 6 or 7 months.
It's going to take time, but fans don't have time or patience anyway, do they? Just 1 goal in the last 5 games, and that was a penalty as well. Aubameyang's not scoring. They're lacking creativity. If only they had a player that had a bit of creativity. I mean, let's quickly start the debate. We haven't got too long, but Mesut Ozil, should he be recalled in January or not?
No, if the manager doesn't want him to play, and you have to back the manager, I think, in those situations. And it wasn't like Ozil was performing amazingly well before Arteta came in. He'd had issues with Unai Emery as well, and it doesn't mean that Ozil was a terrible footballer. It just means his time at Arsenal is up, and probably Arsenal should have done more to have got rid of him, because you don't want somebody like that who's now sort of using Twitter and social media to kind of just win little sort of battles against against the club. So it would have been better if they could have got rid of him. I've been winding up my Arsenal friends saying Arteta's the Spanish George Graham, given the amount of sort of how few goals they've been scoring. But I don't actually believe it, and I think if he gets time, he will make them a better team.
Ozil, yes or no?
That ship sailed, in my opinion. I think there's too much water under the bridge with that.
Rightly so?
Listen, you don't know whether it's inside politics, the amount of money that he's been given in his contract, which has been well documented. If he's on 300 grand a week, I mean, you look, that's 1.2 million a month, which is draining out of a football club, and he's not getting paid.
It's a pound behind you.
Something. I wouldn't mind a bit of quid behind him.
But the money's irrelevant now, isn't it?
Something has to give. You can't drain 1.2 million a month out of a business and you're not getting anything back from it. Look at the Gareth Bale standoff at Real Madrid. Something had to give. And
so are you saying
then
he should be playing? Because at the moment then, he's
not
going anywhere.
No, there has to be some kind of a deal done or an agreement done for him. The Ozil situation in January has to come to an end.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I think the players will look at Arteta and say, right, because you're not scoring or we're not scoring goals, you're bending your beliefs and your principles because of certain results, and I don't think he will do that anyway. As for Wolves, only Spurs have conceded fewer goals, but they don't score either. Would you like to see them open up a little bit?
No, I think if they did that, then the balance would probably go. And I think that Nuno, over the time in the Championship and in the Premier League, you just back him to be right, because he's been right on most of his calls. I think that they have. We were talking earlier about Jota. You lost somebody like Jota who's gone into Liverpool. That is going to harm your attack. Adama Traore does have these times when he's maybe not as I suppose impactful as sort of others, and he's on one of those at the moment. But overall, they remain a very solid, top half Premier League team that will be knocking on the door. Maybe I don't really see them as top six, but not far off it. And so I think that you just trust Nuno, and if he wants to play that way, then let him.
Okay, Robbo, it's an interesting one, isn't it? A difficult one to call. What's your Betfred selection here?
Yeah, I think Traore will come back into this. The potency in Wolves' attack, I think he's important to them. With his speed and his pace, I think he can cause Arsenal problems. So I'm going to back Traore for an assist at any time.
Mark?
I think the Wolves can get something from this game. So just Wolves or draw double chance, so Arsenal not to win.
Yeah, I'm actually going for Wolves win. I think Arsenal are struggling at the moment, not in a good place, and I think Wolves can grind them down, but I don't see many goals in this game, I have to say. Okay, game preview 9. Monday Night Football is Leicester against Fulham. And how disappointing were Leicester against Liverpool? I said earlier, I thought they had a real chance and Liverpool were there for the taking. Liverpool excellent, but how poor were Leicester?
Very poor, because they destroyed my acca for the weekend as well. I had them.
I had Leicester.
I had Leicester to win. The way they've been playing. But Brendan Rodgers quite rightly said after the game, a lot's been made out of Jurgen Klopp's injuries. He's also suffered a lot of injuries and he's had to change a lot of things. But I think they were poor because they've started the season so well. We were comparing them to how they have started. They lost Chilwell again this season, and he's been able to remould the squad, rejuvenate them again. And they are realistic title challengers from where they are.
I think even after that,
I think they fell away. They fell away the last season, and I think after that performance against Liverpool, they're probably, you wouldn't put them in the top 3 or 4 bracket, but I still think they'll be there or thereabouts, just because it's a strange season that we're seeing. We're seeing the amount of goals that are going in, and I do give them a chance of being up there because I saw them play it first hand against Leeds, and they were outstanding. I think they have got a lot of injuries, but I do think that they can continue it over a period of time. I think the likes of Spurs and Leicester, it's all about who can stay the course. We've got no doubt the quality of players that they've got, but it's having the mentality and the winning mentality to stay the course.
They've certainly got a proven goal scorer, but I don't know, it just kind of told me that actually for those that have been saying Leicester for the title challenge, well, this is a real chance to make a statement. And they didn't just lose, they failed miserably.
Yeah, they weren't great. I just think it's the brilliance of Liverpool, though. I mean, they are, if they're not the best team in Europe, probably you'd say Bayern Munich, but then does
that tell you then that the gap? I think if they're going to have to finish above Liverpool, and even with the injuries Liverpool have.
I just think Liverpool they were my tip at the start. I think they are the best team around, really, in terms of the Premier League. And Leicester to lose at Anfield, the 3-0 was disappointing, but there were a couple. Liverpool were great as they were against Arsenal when they sort of put 3 on them. The own goal doesn't help, sort of matters really. I suppose you wanted to keep it 0-0. It wasn't a great performance, but I don't hold it against Leicester. I think they've been good enough for most of the campaign to suggest they'll be. I don't have them as top 4, but I don't think they'll be too far away from that.
Yeah, Fulham. Penalties. Scott Parker won't want any more relief. First Ademola Lookman and now
new ways to
Cavallero.
miss terrible ones. It's not just sort of missing them. It's in laughable sort of circumstances.
They've got to be 2 of the worst, haven't they? in consecutive games, they've got to be 2 of the worst penalties.
Scotty Parker won't have any hair soon, will he? He'll be pulling it out.
I'm. If you're down there, you can't. I think a penalty. There's about 78% success rate of scoring a penalty, and Fulham over a sustained period are about 50%, which is absolutely ridiculous, really. And I'm looking at there, and I don't really see a natural one in there because Mitrovic has missed them. Cavallero can't stand up. Lookman, you wouldn't want him back on them anytime soon. So it's a problem, and there's a lot of penalties being dished out in the Premier League this year, and you need to have somebody that can get 4 out of 5 at least. That 80% mark.
I think the best thing you could have done is let Lookman take it and dink it down the middle again, because it's the last thing that anybody would expect him to do. Nobody would expect him to do it again.
Expect that, would you? But is it just as worrying though that Scott said after the game that they're not competing? I mean, it's one thing with penalties and individual incidents, but if they're not even competing,
that's worrying.
From the word go, and you're down there.
From a manager, that's worrying, because you look at your squad, your budget and everything else, they're going to be down there. Not necessarily bottom 3, but in the bottom half, and they're looking to stay up. So minimum requirement is maximum effort. And if he's not getting that and he's saying that, then there's an issue there, yeah. Okay,
Betfred selection for this one?
I've gone for a convincing Leicester win, and I think there'll be more than 3 goals in the game.
I'm going for Leicester half-time, full-time in this game. Fulham start matches terribly too often. I think in 5 times already they've conceded in the first 10 minutes. I mean, you're giving yourself a mountain to climb.
Yeah, full house. Can't see Fulham getting anything out of this game, and I think Leicester will bounce back after what I feel was a poor performance. Leicester to win 2-0 for me. Game preview 10, also Monday Night Football. West Ham against Villa. Let's start with West Ham, and I don't want to speak too soon, but they've got through the real difficult set of fixtures, and then the ones that you say, okay, let's see how consistent they can be. Winnable games. They've won back-to-back, haven't they, against Fulham and Sheffield United. How do you see them under Moyes?
They've been resilient under David Moyes. I was pleased when he was given the opportunity to take the reins full-time, and again, a manager that's been able to put his own stamp on the team. Maybe not backed as much as he would like to have been in the transfer market. Certain players that he missed out on in the summer. I think he didn't get players that he wanted, but I think the way that his team have responded, the way that the players are playing for him, I think it tells you a lot. I think Antonio has been brilliant this season. He's been given that role as the lone striker, taking the responsibility on, and I think they missed him when he was out injured for a couple of games. Haller come in, but didn't really grab, say, look, I want the shirt's mine. He's not really done it since he's gone there, and I think, but. As a whole, what Moyes has done, there's definite progression there. He's taken the nucleus of a squad that almost got relegated to having a decent start to the season. I
think it's definitely fair to say Haller's been disappointing in a West Ham shirt, but actually scoring the winner last week, and he scored the winner on his debut for the Ivory Coast as well. Mikel Antonio should come back.
Yeah, I mean,
he's arguably their best player. But
Antonio has to play at them. He's got himself into that position now where he's sort of one of the untouchables really in that starting 11. But Haller was somebody that in Germany really did look the part, and I was a bit disappointed with his season first time up at West Ham. Sometimes it can take a long time, and I remember Modric taking sort of about 6 months, and he went on to win a Ballon d'Or. So I think you do have to give players a season to settle. He wants players around him, and when he played up front on his own, he seemed to be isolated. But now Fornals drifts in off one wing. There's a bit of penetration from Bowen. Maybe the team's just playing a lot better, and that will sort of help him as they go forward.
Yeah, I mean, Villa, you just don't know what you're going to get with them. I mean, I just went Villa crazy last week. I thought they'd win. Thought Ollie Watkins was going to be my star man. Brilliant against Liverpool and Arsenal, and then they concede 4 against Southampton and lose to Brighton, who we know are a good side, but again. Why such the inconsistency?
You don't know, as you say, we're getting strange results this year. But like you, I thought Villa, well, they are night and day compared to last year. I think this year they've been really good. The signings were needed. I think last year they really struggled for goals, and he addressed that by getting Watkins. Missed out on Callum Wilson, which he openly said they went to try and get him. And then they got Ollie Watkins, which I think is probably a better fit for the way that they play. And Jack Grealish now is playing with better players around him. He seems to have had a weight lifted off him, that there's not so much onus on him, there's other players around him. And I think the signing of Ross Barkley was a really astute one. And I think credit to him as well, who's at Chelsea. He saw Euros at the end of the season, thinking, do you know what, if I stay here, game time's going to be limited. I've got no chance of getting in the England squad. Okay, he wasn't in the last England squad, but he's not going to get in an England squad if he's not playing. So going to Villa, playing weekly, playing regularly, playing well like he has been doing, gives himself an opportunity.
He could be a big blow though, couldn't he, if he, not being right. And how much do they rely on him? How much do they rely on Grealish?
Well, I mean, Grealish is, if you think Zaha's maybe the biggest influence, one sort of player for a team, I mean, Grealish wouldn't be far behind that at Aston Villa. He's now been linked with Manchester City, which I think tells you the kind of levels he's playing at. I think just in terms of their inconsistencies, I do wonder if it's a bit of a mentality issue in that last season they were down there fighting relegation. This year they look better than that. But if you then want to make that sort of next jump, every game's a big one, and sort of Brighton at home has to be treated the same way as Arsenal away is, or Liverpool at home, and just wonder if maybe that's not quite there. And you do get that with quite a few teams that are mid-table where they just haven't got that instinct to keep going and keep winning.
Okay, Robbo, Betfred selection for this game.
I think we'll see goals. I think we'll see two teams that don't particularly defend that well, always leak goals. I'm going to go for a score draw.
I'm just going to keep it a bit more simple than that, just both teams to score.
I'm going both teams to score, but West Ham to win. I think West Ham, they seem to be more consistent for me right now. I hope so anyway. Okay, our best fantasy football pick of the weekend. So we pick a player that we think will perform in this game week. Who have you gone for?
I've gone for somebody we talked about earlier, somebody who I think has got a real opportunity of adding to his goal tally, Jamie Vardy. They're playing against the Fulham team that are struggling. I think his pace and his power, his goal scoring ability will be too much for Fulham. They are going to get chances. They are going to. I suspect they'll win the game. They'll win the game comfortably. If they win the game 3 or 4, Vardy will get at least 1 or 2.
Yeah,
I'm going Leicester as well, but not Vardy. Yuri Tillemans, who was in good goal scoring form for Belgium, scored against England as well. And Leicester are coming into a nice little run of fixtures, starting with Fulham. So I think you want to start getting your Leicester players in your fantasy teams.
I'm going to take a little bit of pressure off Fulham. I know City aren't scoring much at the moment, and Burnley got their first win, but I do think City could absolutely hammer them if it goes well. Interested to see Aguero's back, whether he starts or not, but I think he probably will start with Gabriel Jesus. And I think, again, like Vardy, if Leicester score, Vardy scores. If City score, I think Gabriel Jesus will get a couple here, but we'll wait and see. Team treble, 3-1 this one between the three of us. So we think we've gone with Certs. Who have you gone for? What team is going to win this weekend?
I've gone for the old team you just mentioned, Man City, against Burnley for exactly the same reasons. I think Burnley have been struggling. I think City, they do need a performance. They do need to get goals. And at home against Burnley, I think there's only one outcome. So I think that's an absolute home banker.
I'm going to avoid any puns about Michael Jackson, but Tranmere have done very well since he departed the club. 6 wins in a row. They're in FA Cup action against Brackley. It should be a home win.
Should be a thriller. Sorry, terrible. I'm kind of having one at the moment on this category. So I've always tried to look for teams that I think could justify with decent odds. But this week I'm dipping into the Championship. I'm going for Blackburn. I know they've been a bit inconsistent of late, but I think with Adam Armstrong, and I also think with a bit of consistency, they've got every chance of getting into the top 6. Barnsley have done well, but I think it's going to be a home win on that one. So I'm going for a Blackburn win. Let's have a quick chat on the Champions League for next week fixtures. Match day 5 it is. Porto against Manchester City. Now, City beat Porto 3-1. Should already be qualified, but we don't know as yet as we speak. How do you see this one going?
As you say, should already be qualified. And I think this is the one that Pep Guardiola wants. This is the one that's been missing from the trophy cabinet. Hence the reason I think we see the new 2-year contract. I think he's won everything with them, but he was brought to Manchester City for a reason, to win the Champions League. And I think he's obviously had talks with the owner. He's got a very good relationship with the owner. And he's gone, look, give me 2 years to win the Champions League. And I honestly think that's where they're at with it. I think he's got 2 years to win the Champions League, this and next.
If he doesn't?
You don't know. Every manager's got a lifespan. I'm not going to sit here and say, he'll leave or get the sack after 2 years, because you don't know. They might have won 2 Premiership titles, 2 FA Cups, etc. in that space of time. I'd love to see Messi at Manchester City. The way that Barcelona are at the moment, the uncertainty around his future, the relationship that Pep's got with him, Pep signing a new deal. Is there just something there that Messi could turn up in Manchester?
Can you see it happening?
Yeah, I really can. If Pep's had the conversation with the owners and said, look, Champions League's a priority, 2 years, yeah, what's the chances of backing me and getting Messi for 2 years? Has that conversation happened? I'd like to think so. I'd love to see him in the Premier League.
One of the few clubs that can afford him, and obviously there is a relationship there, not just Pep, but up above as well. Porto, how are they doing right now? What do you see?
I mean, I think Portuguese football's not as strong as when you was playing there, Scott.
It was very strong.
We've seen bad results for Benfica in Europe already. Sporting were knocked out before it even got to the Europa League group stages. I think the the constant sales and always looking to sell your best players has maybe just gone a little bit too far for them. And Man City should win even away from home.
Yeah, and even with perhaps a weakened side, I think we're all agreed there. Liverpool versus Ajax, good 1-0 win over in Amsterdam. Again, they should already be qualified, but as yet we don't know as we speak.
Yeah, I think this might be a little bit tricky for Liverpool, because if Klopp is through, he could, this could be like a League Cup team or an FA Cup team, and they've not done that well in some of these sort of those competitions, because he can, he's not looking to play sort of 4 or 5. When he plays a weakened team, it's like everybody
under 16.
Yeah, exactly. He's play, and so this might be one where you get an upset if Liverpool, just keep an eye on the team news, but. I think Ajax are capable enough here of causing some damage against a Klopp. We know what Klopp thinks of the fixture congestion. He's not hiding that. So keep an eye on it.
Against the very weakened Liverpool side. Man U, PSG, now it's a fascinating one, this one. United have done well with 3 wins out of 4, but actually win, they'll be qualified. Lose, and wow, they might not at all. How do you see it?
It's a big game for them. I think they would need a point to qualify. Yeah. And it's, the performance in Paris when they played away was probably the best of the season, which come off the back of indifferent results. Said about before earlier on in the show about the roller coaster, the ups and downs of Manchester United. You don't know what Manchester United team you're going to get or what performance you're going to get. I'd like to see more of Van der Beek coming into the team. Watched the game last night. I thought he was outstanding. Box to box, I thought he gave him just a little bit more. I think he will probably start coming into the team a little bit more. But they're playing PSG, who are one of the top teams in Europe. It's going to be a very, very difficult game for them. As you say, lose at home and then it throws it wide open.
Do PSG have to win then? Do they go to this thinking all 3 points?
They might play it tactically and think a draw's not a disastrous result, but they weren't very good in beating Leipzig last night. That was the game I watched, and they were hanging on. It was a really ugly performance from Paris. So I think this might be under 2.5 goals, because there's a lot riding on it. It feels like a knockout game before the knockout stages in some respects. Final
one, Sevilla-Chelsea, 0-0 at the Bridge, but Chelsea are already qualified. So how do you see this?
I think it will be an option for Frank to use some of the players that he hasn't used, allow him to compete still in the Premier League, and give game time to players the likes of Giroud, who we saw come on last night, who he talked very openly and honestly about today in the press, saying that he knows what he means to him, the relationship that they've got. He wants him to stay, he doesn't want him to leave. He is going to get game time, he is going to get minutes. And a game like this, you'd thoroughly expect Giroud to start. And he's going to have to start games because he wants to play in the French national team in the Euros at the end of the season. That's going to be at the back of his mind at 33, 34. This is going to be his last major tournament, and he knows that. And I think he's one of the most underrated players that's played in the Premier League. You look at his goal scoring record, you look at his records over the years, it's phenomenal. I think he only needs a few more to knock Thierry Henry off the perch at international level for the French team. So I think what he's done and what he's achieved in the Premier League is brilliant. But I think going forward, he is going to be limited game time due to the Timo Werner, the way Tammy Abraham's playing. And if he stays, it will be these type of games that he plays in.
He came on last night and made a difference, but it could be a very weakened side of Chelsea. How do you see this game going?
I don't think they can play a weakened team. I mean, if it's
so strong.
If it's Azpilicueta, that's not a downgrade at right back. I mean, what's as bad as they can go at centre back? Are you looking at Christensen or somebody like that? So it's not like they can play a terrible team, really. I think they're good enough to get a draw away to Sevilla, whatever team it is. If it's Hudson-Odoi or whatever, they want to prove themselves. So Chelsea to get a draw.
Okay, great stuff. That's it, chaps. What are you up to this weekend, Robbo?
Nothing. Nice little quiet weekend.
Watch a lot of football on the box.
I'm going to watch the Leeds game. Doing a bit of work for the Leeds game, Leeds-Everton, and then the Sheffield United game afterwards.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks for your company. Really enjoyed it. And as ever, Mark, thank you too. That is it for this week. We'll be back this time next week. We'll look ahead to what should be almost a groundbreaking weekend, isn't it, with the fans coming back. We'll see what tier the clubs are in, but still, it's fantastic that fans are allowed to be back. Remember, of course, if you are going to gamble, please, on behalf of everyone here at the Racing Post and Betfred, gamble responsibly. Bye for now.